You would think that when strapped to a gurney, knowing the life force in you is about to expire, you'd want to say something nice to someone, or profound, or perhaps apologize to the family of the victim that is watching your demise. There have been a ton of chilling last words from inmates before they died. In this video, we will tell you about 10 scary last words from prison inmates. Number 10. Grover Cleveland Redding. Last words. I have something to say, but not at this time. This one brings a whole new meaning to the phrase speak now, or forever hold your peace. While not much is known about Grover Cleveland Redding, he was said to have been mentally unstable, as he believed that he was the Prince of Abyssinia and his job was to bring his people back to the homeland. Okay then. He then began an anti-government riot, which resulted in 2 of his followers getting shot to death. He was sentenced to death. According to a website on prisoners who were executed in 1921, Redding was hanged on June 24, 1921 in Illinois. What he wanted to say will forever remain unknown. Number 9. Carl Panzram. Last words. Hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could hang a dozen men while you're screwing around. Carl Panzram was one of the most vicious and remorseless criminals to have ever walked the earth, as he was a convicted serial killer, rapist, arsonist, and burglar in the 1920s. In fact, in his own words, he wrote, "In my lifetime, I have murdered 21 human beings. I have committed thousands of burglaries, robberies, larcenies, arsons, and last but not least, I have committed sodomy on more than 1,000 male human beings. For all these things, I am not in the least bit sorry." Despite having such an extensive criminal record, he was given a pretty light sentence of just 25 years in Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary in Kansas. During his sentence, he threatened to kill the first man that bothers me. And that's exactly what he did when he committed yet another murder, this time in the jail. That's when he was sentenced to death. He obviously wanted to die, as he did not file an appeal and threatened to kill anyone who tried appealing on his behalf. The 39-year-old was hanged on September 5, 1930. Prior to his hanging, when the noose was put around his neck, he spat in the executioner's face and said, "I wish all mankind had one neck so I could choke it." Before proceeding further, please subscribe to the channel and click on the notification so you can get notified when we upload the next video. Number 8. Peter Kürten. We bet that you've never heard of Peter Kürten. He was a German serial killer at a time when there were a few of them about in Germany. That was the early 20th century. He killed at least 9 people and did terrible things with their bodies. One other thing was that he drank the blood of his victims, and that's why he was sometimes named the Vampire of Dusseldorf. In 1931, he was beheaded by the guillotine, and just before that happened, he looked at his psychiatrist and said, "Tell me, after my head has been chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures." Before the blade came down, the psychiatrist replied, "No." Number 7. James French. James French killed 2 people in the late 50s and mid-60s in the USA. One of those people was his cellmate. The 2 didn't get along very well. His actual last words when sitting in the electric chair were, "There's nothing else to say." But the last thing he said to a reporter was this: "If I were covering my execution, do you know what I'd say in the newspaper headline tomorrow?" The reporter said, "What?" He answered, "French fries." Yep, that was amusing. We think this next guy was also attempting to make a joke. Number 6. Timothy McVeigh. He infamously said, "I am the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul." He was the one behind the Oklahoma City bombing, which killed 168 people and injured 680 others. This bombing is actually the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in the U.S. His execution date was set for June 11, 2001, and he made a request for his execution to be publicly televised. But his motion was denied. He invited a composer to play classical music on the night of his execution, and he requested to have a Catholic priest. He was executed by lethal injection, and his way of getting executed was way shorter than most inmates waiting on death row. He only spent 4 years on death row, while most inmates spend an average of 15 years. Number 5. Roger Keith Coleman. His case gained nationwide attention and major controversy because he maintained his innocence the whole time during his conviction. and even right before he was executed. During his final last words, he said, "An innocent man is going to be murdered tonight. When my innocence is proven, I hope Americans will realize the injustice of the death penalty as other civilized countries have." He was convicted in Virginia for assaulting and murdering his sister-in-law on the day that he had been fired from work. After his death, the DNA evidence was reanalyzed, and in January 2006, the governor of Virginia announced that the retesting of the DNA evidence has conclusively proven that he was guilty of the crime. Number 4. Robert Alton Harris. Robert Alton Harris was executed in California in 1992 for multiple murders. He had been a career criminal with a long rap sheet, although his killing of 2 boys is why he got the gas chamber. He was incredibly heartless if you read his story, but we won't go into it today. In the end, he became poetic, with his last words being, "You can be a king or a street sweeper, but everybody dances with the Grim Reaper." He's not wrong about that. Number 3. Jeffrey Dahmer. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms for murdering 17 men and boys in the Milwaukee area between 1978 and 1991. He was into necrophilia and cannibalism. The interesting thing about Jeffrey was that he wasn't given the death penalty. His inmate actually beat him to death because he said that Jeffrey was a sick and creepy man. He used to make his food to look like human body part and covered them in ketchup to make it look like blood. According to Jeffrey Dahmer's murderer, his last words were, "I don't care if I live or die. Go ahead and kill me." Number 2. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos, you might have seen portrayed in a Hollywood movie called Monster. She worked selling her body on the streets and killed 6 of her male customers. She had claimed she was defending herself, but that didn't hold up in court. Aileen Wuornos was a sex worker along Florida's highways and claimed she only killed in self-defense. But her shooting of several men in 1989 and 1990. Wuornos was convicted in 6 of the murders, landed her on the state's death row, before she died by lethal injection on October 9, 2002. She invoked the films Independence Day and The Terminator. She is now known as one of America's worst female serial killers. She was executed in 2002, and just before that she promised she'd come back to life again. She said, "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6. Like the movie, big mothership and all. I'll be back." Number 1. Tom Blackjack Ketchum. He was an outlawed cowboy who murdered someone in 1895. After that, his gang fled to New Mexico, where they committed a few robberies before he was captured during an unsuccessful attempt to rob a train. He was quickly arrested, put on trial, found guilty, and sentenced to death by hanging. When his execution date arrived, it was the biggest public display because he was the first person to be hanged for a train robbery in New Mexico. However, things didn't go as smoothly as they hoped. Before he was hanged, he said this, "I'll be in hell before you start breakfast, boys. Let her rip." The rope completely decapitated him, and it is said that his headless body landed on his feet and stayed standing upright for quite a while. Do let us know in the comments what are your thoughts about this. Thanks for watching.